Chris Parody and Melba here. Today we're going to teach you the classic fiddle tune Old Joe Clark. It's a traditional standard, so anyone who plays acoustic music has probably learned this song at some point. If you haven't played with them before, it's a great song to bond on because it gives you some common musical language that you can immediately relate to one another with. And I'm going to show you how to play it in a fingerstyle arrangement, so it's also going to be really well suited to solo playing and then into many other situations as well. If you have a friend who plays another instrument, this can give you something that you can arrange as a really nice full duet where you can be doing some backup and some melody playing at the same time. So we'll talk a little bit more about all of those different aspects as we get further into it. Let's start with a really simple, straightforward interpretation of the song, which when you heard me play the song at the beginning, most of these traditional fiddle tunes work in what's called an AABB format. So the A section is 8 measures long, repeated once. The B section is also 8 measures long and repeated once. So we're playing AABB throughout the whole song, however many repetitions of that we want to do. So what I did was the first A was really simple and stripped down, and then the second A I started to play more freely and added all sorts of different embellishments that I have learned to play over the years, sometimes just through imagining new ideas. I probably don't ever play it quite the same way twice through the song. So however I played it at the beginning of the video, that'll actually be a little bit of a challenge. I'll have to go back and figure out what that was when I make the tab for the song, because I don't have a set way of playing it. I just have many different little twists and turns that I will use as I play through it. So we're going to start, again, really simple, and then I'll walk you through some possibilities for how I do that second part, that second A section, that second B section, where I'm starting to play more freely and add in some variation and embellishment to the melody. We're going to start out on a G chord, so bring your ring finger to the 3rd fret of the low E string. And before we add anything else, let's just work our thumb, our bass pattern. So whenever we're on G, this is what the thumb will be doing in the song. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's our rhythm section. It's playing that bass line of quarter notes. And it's going to be doing that, like I said, every time we're on G. So as I often recommend, start with that, come back to it. It's the heartbeat of the song. It's really the thing that's going to tie everything else together. So keeping that ring finger there, we're going to take the pinky and we're going to add it to the 3rd fret of the B string, and that's going to give us the starting point for our melody. So as we get into the first measure, we're going to pinch strings 6 and 2 to begin. As our thumb alternates down to string 4, we're going to play the open 1st string. So those are both pinches, 1, 2. Okay, our thumb comes back to string 6, and as we do, the index finger is going to fret the 1st fret of the 1st string. And then as we come to beat 4, we're going to play the open 4th and 1st string again. So here's measure 1. Just 4 quarter notes, 4 pinches there. Measure 2 is going to start with the same pinch that we started with on measure 1. We're going to be pinching the 3rd frets of string 6 and 2, the E and the B string. And then as the thumb alternates down to string 4 for beat 2, the index is going to fret the 1st fret of the 2nd string. We're also going to pinch there, and then we're going to lift that finger off to open up the 2nd string as our thumb returns to string 6 in the bass. Our last beat of that measure is just the bass note on string 4 all by itself. So measure 2 will sound like that. I teach this song to students of all ages, but I really like to teach it to young students because it has that sense of a really strong archetypal melody that sticks in your ear very easily after you've heard it just a few times. And it's a little bit more exciting for them than, say, learning Three Blind Mice or something like that. But the other aspect, like I said earlier in the video, is it's a song that's widely played in the acoustic music world, so it gives them something that they can really grow with over time and continue to play the rest of their life. As I teach it to them, the other thing that's really beneficial, but this works well with adults too, is I always tell them, okay, we're going to start and we're going to learn the question. So that's what we've learned so far. And in a moment, what I'm going to show you is the answer. The first answer, which starts by slightly restating the question. Okay, then what happens is we restate the original question. before giving the final answer, which also happens to be the final answer of the B section. And the B section is going to ask a new question. It's going to give a new first answer. It's going to restate the new question, and then it's going to repeat that final answer. So it's a very easy framework to learn the song in, and it can help a lot with memorizing the song, because rather than hearing every new part as something new, you're really taking note of where the song is just repeating itself or referencing something that it did earlier. Okay, so we've got that first question now. As we come into the first answer in the A section, we're going to begin by, as I mentioned, restating the original question, just the beginning of it. So there's the first measure, repeated as the third measure. The fourth measure, though, is going to be where a little twist happens. Keep your pinky right where it is. Allow your ring finger to come down to the third fret of D as your middle finger comes to the second fret of G. And your thumb is going to come to the first fret of the low E string. You're going to do a thumbed note there to get the bass. Get nice and snug to the fret wire and just kind of drop the big pad of the thumb on there, and that'll get you that first fret bass note. You might also, if you're familiar with this chord already, consider just adding your index finger to the first fret of the B string. You'll need it later in the song, and you might just be used to playing this F shape, which would be minus the pinky. But keep the pinky, as I said, where it is, because we need that melody note on the third fret of the B string. And what we're going to do is we're going to pinch string 6 and 2. And then we're just going to alternate our bass for the rest of that measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my bass pattern, whenever I'm on F, which is the only other chord we're going to be using in this song, is the same bass pattern as what it was on the G chord. The only thing that's changed are the fretted notes. I've got that thumb note on fret 1 of the low E. I've got my ring finger on the third fret of the D string. So that's my bass line for this F chord. And that's how it sounds with the melody. Okay, let's hear the first answer now. Alright, next thing that happens, measures 5 and 6 are exactly the same as measures 1 and 2. So there we are, repeating the question of the A section, and we're about to come into the final answer. We're going to play that F chord as I showed it to you earlier. We don't need the pinky though, and in fact, we're going to need the index finger in a moment, but start with it off, because the first thing you're going to do is you're going to pinch string 6 and 2. The second string is open there. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fret that first fret with my index finger as my thumb drops down there to play string 4 in the bass. Then I'm going to take that index finger off. I'm going to pinch 6 and 2 again, just like I did on the first beat. And then I'm going to drop the thumb, and I'm going to pinch strings 4 and 3 there. So that's what I get for measure 7. Okay, now I'm just going to let my ring finger come back up to the third fret of the low E string. I'm going to pinch the open third string with that bass note, and then I'm just going to bass the rest of that measure. Okay, so here's the final answer. And that gives us the A section. Let's hear the whole thing. And of course, we would repeat that all again. And we'll save that repetition. We'll learn the B part first, and then I'll show you again some ideas for how you might make the second time through a little bit different, change things up a little bit, add some excitement. Okay, so the B section, it's going to be the same formula again as the A part. So let's start with the question. And here what we're going to do is we're going to pinch, we're on G again, so I'm fretting the third fret of string 6, the low E. I'm going to pinch 6 and 3, and then I'm going to drop the thumb for my second bass note, and then I'm going to do that again. So that's measure 1. Okay, now come to the third fret of the B string with your pinky fretting. You're going to pinch 6 and 2, move Move to the first fret of B with the index, pinch 4 and 2. Open up the B string, pinch 6 and 2. And then drop the thumb. That is a reference to something that happened in the A section. So again, you might notice some references to what's happened earlier. So here's the question of the B section. Just like in the A section, the first answer of the B section starts by slightly restating the question. So measure 3 is the same as measure 1. We're going to pinch, thumb, just like we did a moment ago. Okay, now we're going to go to our F chord, and this time we're going to pinch, again, 6 and 3, so very similar to the last chord, but we're getting a new sound from our different fretted notes there, and we just pinch, and then the thumb takes us the rest of the way through that measure. So that gives us this for the first answer. Okay, now we're going to come back and repeat the question again. That leaves us at the final answer, which, as I mentioned earlier, is exactly the same as the final answer of the A part. So we were able to learn the B part pretty quickly there because we zeroed in again on all the places where the song is referencing things that it did earlier. I encourage you to do this with really any song you learn, but especially if you're learning any of this traditional fiddle music or old-timey music. There are a ton of songs that follow this exact same formula, down to the measures, the way the measures behave in terms of asking questions, answering questions, and all of that. So it can be really helpful. The color coding can be really helpful if you're looking at music, but if you can, try not to even really use the music too much, maybe just to jog your memory. Try to really get this stuff happening just through listening at first, because the sooner you can get to that point, the more freedom you're going to have in playing the song, the more enjoyment you're going to have, because you can just be at one with the guitar. You won't have to be looking at music and trying to read the tab and all of that at the same time. So these are some helpful tools to get you learning things in a little bit of a faster way, and again, getting to the point where you're playing them with a greater sense of freedom. So now that we've gone through a basic interpretation of the song, we can consider that kind of like the skeleton of the song. It's the bare bones of the song. If we were to try to boil it down to pretty much the simplest thing we could, that would be an excellent way to play the song. I encourage you to really develop a mastery of playing that simple bare bones version before you start getting into more elaborate ways of playing the song. For one thing, it'll help you be able to grow into those more elaborate ways over time. If you have a really strong sense of what the simplest version of the song is, then adding things becomes a little bit easier to figure out what it is you're changing and how you get to whatever it is you come up with for more varied and elaborate ways of playing the song as you add in those embellishments. But the other thing too is I find that oftentimes we can be so pulled towards those fancy and exciting ways that we hear a song played that we never really develop that mastery over the simple way of playing it. And the truth is, when we're looking for variation and embellishment, sometimes the best thing we can do is take a less is more approach and actually strip things away from what we're doing, return closer to that bare bones version of the song. And by creating space and simplicity, we immediately create some variation, but we also make it more exciting for when we add in some of that more fancy stuff later on in the song. So especially if we're playing this, as a 5-6 minute song, we want to change it up a little bit. We don't want to play it the same way every time. So I like to start with the simplest thing possible. That gives me a little bit of a runway to gradually add more interest, kind of bring the song to some sort of a climax. And then as I come towards the end, I might start to strip things down a little bit again, make it more spacious, which can kind of, in a sense, create more intimacy in what we're playing as well. That space after a lot of excitement can just be a way to really draw the listener in and make those closing moments of the song a little bit more powerful. So remember that less is more, and sometimes just playing the simplest possible thing is actually going to be the most powerful thing that you can do in the song. So as much as what we're about to do is fun and exciting, I encourage you, again, really develop a mastery over that simple form of the song so that you can return to it at any point. Okay, so let's talk about the fancier ways of playing the song. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk a little bit more free form here. I may still throw some tab up on the screen for what I describe. I'm not sure if it's going to match exactly what I played at the beginning of the video, because that was just playing very free form. I don't remember exactly what I did there. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through some options here. Whether or not what we do matches the performance at the beginning of the video, I'm not sure. The tab will be there. I'll figure out what it was and put it in there for you anyway. But just to say, you may see some variation here because I'm not sure if I'll do exactly the same things. Okay, so first thing that I do when I play some of these variations is fairly simple. This is kind of adding body to the chords. I'll add in what I would call the middle voice. So the middle voice is this open G note here. So previously we were playing strings 6 and 2 when we pinched, but sometimes what I'll do is I'll play 3 notes rather than just 2. So we just get a little bit more of a full sound, more resonance, more body on that chord. Generally keep that the same probably. Okay, there's a little thing I like to do, which is previously we were doing quarter notes. But that last quarter note, what I did was I pushed it into the third beat. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4 in the melody, I was going 1, 2, 3, and 4. So a little bit more syncopated, interesting rhythm there. Okay, another little 3-noter here, adding in that middle voice again, but another common thing I'll do is I'll roll my fingers like that, and then come through the rest. So let's see, what was that? Okay, then you hear some notes I added there at the end. Okay, so that was on the 4th beat. Just before it, actually, on the and of 3, I played the open G, played my 4th bass note, and then the open G again. There, what I would call those notes, so let's see, we've added a middle voice, we've added a syncopated melody note. Oh, I forgot the roll. And then we've added those extra notes at the end. Those extra notes, they're not the melody, they're really just kind of rhythmic filler notes that come from the chord we're on. If you've done a lot of finger picking already, chances are you've probably programmed a whole bunch of different rhythms into your picking hand, a whole bunch of different possibilities. So what I mean by that is if you think of a drummer's role, their job is to obviously keep time and keep things tight and rhythmic, but we're not concerned whether they hit the snare drum or the floor tom as they're doing a drum fill. It just matters when it happens. So here's how I would relate that to guitar. When I did this little thing at the end, I chose to use the G string twice, but I could have also played the B string there, or I could have added my pinky to the 3rd fret of the high E string and played that note at the end. So you see, the note doesn't really matter. It's just that we're staying within the chord and that we're hitting things in time. So in that sense, I encourage you to really allow that picking hand. That's another great micro variation, right? One time you could play that when you get to that point in the song. You could play that the next time. And you could play that the next time. So now you have 3 things that you could do. I like to think of it also, when you get to this stuff, as kind of a choose your own adventure. The first time you can choose option B, the second time it could be option C, the third time option A. So that's another micro improvisation. You can decide each time through the tune to play a little bit differently. We'll come back to that first question in a moment for another variation, but let's first figure out how we might add some variation into the first answer of the A part. So we have this. In that first measure, we could just borrow some ideas we've already done. We could add a roll. We could add a syncopated melody note on the and of 3 there. I think the big spot here is when we get to F. Previously, we just played our melody and let it ring as a whole note, and we then played our bass for the rest of that measure. What if instead we did some more rhythmic? We could do that. So that was pinch, thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb. I could also just play that melody note, take the pinky off. That's another nice little thing I could do there. So the pattern was the same as I described a moment ago, but I just removed the pinky for that final melody note. So another great spot for rhythmic variation. A lot of the same ideas I just mentioned apply there as well. The notes don't really matter as long as we're staying in the chord and we're staying in time. In fact, you might even find some non-chord tones that could sound cool to you. So again, this is the sort of thing you can grow with over time. So be curious and take some risks from time to time to see if you might stumble across a really cool idea that I don't mention here or that hasn't even been heard before on this song, and you might find a way to style it all your own. Now we're coming back to the repetition of the question, and this time we can, rather than repeat it verbatim like we did earlier in the song, we can maybe change it up, add a little twist here. So I think I did something like this at the beginning of the video. So the second measure there is pretty much the same, but I did add quite a bit into the first measure. I added some eighth notes. So I started with that same 3-fingered pinch and a little bit of a roll, but then I grabbed the high E string open on the and of 1. Okay, now I'm going to fret the first fret of the first string. I'm going to pinch that with the 4th string in the bass as beat 2. Then my pinky's going to play the 3rd fret of the high E string. So now I have 1 and 2 and. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the 1st fret of the 1st string with my index finger. I'm going to pinch 6 and 1. That's the 3rd beat. Open high E string on the and of the 3rd beat. A little bit of a cat fur mute there for you. Nice way to add a muted tone to your guitar. Okay, let's see. So we had 1 and 2 and 3 and. All right, the last thing we're going to do, beat 4, we're going to fret the 3rd fret of the B string. We're going to pinch that with the 4th string in the bass. And that gives us our new measure here. Okay, as I said, the second measure, that stays the same. That brings us to the final answer now. So we were playing this. I think at the beginning of the video when I added some variation, I did this. So what was that? Well, the beginning of it stayed the same. I played the first 3 beats exactly the same. Similar to something I did earlier, what was happening was on beat 4 we were pinching 4 and 3, but what I did instead was I bumped that melody note a little bit earlier. I bumped it into the 3rd beat, and that means that I'm playing it on the and of 3, so I'm syncopating the melody here, putting it onto the and beat, and then my thumb comes down to finish that measure. So now I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the key thing there. Okay, now I'm back to G, and this was a rhythmic variation. So there's that pinch that we had before. Previously, we just bassed it out, but what I did here was added a whole bunch of extra open G notes. So I did 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You could, again, add in a different string in there as well. Tons of different possibilities, right? Again, the rhythm's the important thing. You might even try different rhythms than that, but you see what I mean. You can change the string and even apply the same rhythm to get a bunch of different ideas, and then you could change the rhythm and the string, so tons of different options. And again, I encourage you to take what you like from how I play it, but also as you play this more and more, you'll find all sorts of cool things that will attract your curiosity and give you some cool ways you can change things up a little bit as well. Okay, that takes us to the B part. And let's see, I think in the B part I did quite a bit of this, which is similar to what we just talked about. adding in some extra G notes there we had just done. But I changed that to 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Again, it's just my bass line, and that other note you hear is the open third string. Okay, then I think probably kept that the same. Maybe I added a roll in there. Then we have same thing as what I did a moment ago for measure 1. Okay, then I did something like this on F. Let's see. Okay, I think that one I'm not quite sure about. We'll see how accurate I am to the performance at the beginning. So I think it was something like this. I played 6 and 2, drop my thumb for the second bass note, so nothing new there. Okay, then I lift off my middle finger so that I can hammer onto the second fret. There's a little bit of a tricky thing in there. That hammer onto the second fret needs to happen right as your thumb is coming back up to string 6 to play beat 3 in the bass. 1, 2, and 3. So this is a tricky technique. I talk about it in some other videos, but just in case you haven't done it yet, what I recommend doing is open that string up, hammer, and try to get that thumb to come down at exactly the same time. As you do that more and more, it'll become really easy to get the timing down. I definitely recommend isolating it like that at first and just really working on lining up the timing of the hammer-on and the bass note. And that will help a lot to make that a very easily repeatable technique further down the road. After that hammer-on, just a little bit of extra rhythmic filler from this F chord. So we had 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. So what I added there on the and of 3 was the second string. On the and of 4, I was back to the third string. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and. All right, now we're going to repeat the question again, but how about this time? I don't think I did this at the beginning of the video, but just to reinforce an idea we've been discussing, instead of going, how about we go like this? Adding in the second string there instead of the third string, so that gives me 1, 2, and there's the second string, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. So the other notes were the open G, but I just splashed in that one open second string note to change things up a little bit. And then for the rest of it, we'll do our roll again. And then I think I caught something else that time as I played it actually that I probably did the other time and didn't mention, which is another rhythmic filler note, the open G right here on the and of 3. So that gives me 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And as I played that, another little thing I caught was there's another syncopated melody note, actually, that first fret. So I do roll on the 1, grab the first fret of the second string on the and of 1. Then my thumb comes down to the second beat on string 4 in the bass. There's another one. Okay, there's the open B string on the and of 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so that just shows you a little bit that some of that stuff, again, I'm just playing with a lot of freedom. Now that I'm trying to go back and remember what I did, I'm realizing some of that stuff that's happening in there. But the key thing is, again, it's all kind of conceptual. These aren't things that are planned out and executed in the same way every time. I'm just taking some of these ideas and I'm just sprinkling them all over the tune wherever I see fit or wherever I see the possibility to do it. So some review of that, we've done rhythmic filler notes, which are not melody notes, just pieces of the chord that we're sprinkling in with our picking hand. And then right here, something we're finding is if we're doing the melody as quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, why not do it as 1 and 2 and? So we move 2 of those melody notes into the and beat slot rather than on the downbeat. We were playing those on the upbeat. That adds a lot of rhythmic excitement to the song the more we do that. So that's another great thing to remember is just push those melody notes over into the and beat before the downbeat that they were on before. Okay, that gives us the repetition of the question. We discovered some new things there. And chances are when I got to the final answer, I think I did it the same way as I did on part 1. Okay, so we'll see how accurate I was in remembering what I did at the beginning of the video. I think I got pretty close, probably a couple things that were a little bit different. But again, that's in the spirit of it. I didn't want to go back and read this exactly as I played it. I am going to, again, do the tab that way, but I'm going to do the tab. I haven't done it yet. I'm going to do it after the video. So I have to go back and figure out everything I've played now. But again, that's kind of in the spirit of it. I don't want to have a preconceived idea of what I'm going to play, even though I was trying to remember what I did earlier. I want it to be in the spirit of just improvising and coming out naturally as I played it. Because that's really what I want to encourage you to do, is to try to do it that same way. And the beauty of a song like this, again, is I really love the melody of the song. It has this kind of mysterious quality to it, especially when played like this. We often hear it played really fast in the bluegrass tradition, but I think if we kind of adapt the song a little bit, slow things down, we can draw out more of the beauty, kind of create a different mood with it. So that's some ideas for how you can start to grow with it. But again, I think you'll find a lot of different ways that you can play it all on your own. You'll just hear things that I don't hear in the tune or that other people don't hear. And again, that's how you can kind of create your own personal touch on it. As we close things out here, I just want to give you a couple ideas about how you might end the song, some little flourishes of notes you might add for an exciting closing statement. So sometimes I'll do this at the end. I'll go like that. So I basically played the final answer, but I dropped the last measure, the return to G. And instead of playing it as we have so far, I played that instead. So what that is, not to drag us down a music theory wormhole here, but that's the G Mixolydian scale, which is the scale that the melody to Old Joe Clark is based upon. It's a G major scale with the 7th note flatted. So instead of playing an F sharp, we play an F, and that creates the G Mixolydian scale. So what I did there is I played G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that is the 3rd fret of low E, open A, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, open D, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. There's the F. That's what makes it Mixolydian, up to the open G, and then I went back the other way. The other thing I did is because I played those notes at somewhat of a brisk pace, I alternated on my picking hand between the thumb and index finger. So if you start with the thumb and end with the thumb, you've done that correctly. It might be helpful if you haven't done that before. As you pick it, just say thumb, index, thumb, index, thumb, index. Sometimes telling yourself what finger to use will help you fire off the right finger. And that gives us just, again, a nice little way of bringing the song to a close there. And that picking style works really well when you're playing single note runs like that are a little brisk. And what I like about it, it has a bouncy feel to it because the thumb is a little bit of a heavier hitter than the index finger, so it creates kind of a slightly different sound when the thumb is picking rather than the index. All right, so that gives us a whole bunch of different ways of playing Old Joe Clark, from a really stripped down, bare bones telling of the song to some more highly varied and embellished ways. I encourage you to explore both of those extremes and everything in between, but most of all to try to find the things that excite you as a player, the things that provoke your sense of joy as you're playing. If you play it and you love it and you want to hear it again, chances are that's going to be the sort of thing that'll connect the most with the listener. And the beauty is that if you really take this approach where you make the song into a living thing rather than just this fixed set thing that you play exactly the same way every time, you can play it for many, many years, really never stop playing it and finding more newness in the song and ways of being creative and ways of just making it something that continually is changing and evolving over time. And that's what really makes a song, I think, stick around in our playing and also help us get to the point where we're really telling an interesting story every time we play it. I hope you have fun with that. Let me know if you have any questions. There's, again, a lot of different paths we could go down in something like this. And I'd be really curious to hear if you play this for a while and you come up with some of your own little twists and turns. Send me a video of you playing it. I'd love to hear what you come up with and how you might play it differently than me. And yeah, hope you have a lot of fun with it. I'll see you soon with another song.